All right, hi Vuejs Amsterdam, and thanks team for the intro. So when I first submitted the CFP for this talk, it was about 1 year ago in August, and then COVID kept pushing back so that I'm only talking to you today. And in that regard, it's a great thing it wasn't some critical news I intend to inform you about ASAP. Anyway, back in August 2021, Vue 3 was already a thing. We've been using it about for some time now. But Nuxt 3 was just a conference once that we'd been hearing about now and then. And in that regard, I plan to talk to you today about Nuxt 2, Nuxt Modules, or they're great, and how you can make some. So I hope you're still fine with that today. All right, just kidding. Today we'll be talking about Nuxt 3, more precisely Nuxt 3 modules. I explain to you what they're about, how you can make some, and why, in my opinion, they are awesome way to get started and involved in open source. So let's get started, shall we? All right, but before that, I'm Lucie Haberer. I'm from France, as you probably guessed from my accent. I just graduated computer science last December, as Tim said. So, well, I'm really happy to be done with that. I've also been working at Prismic.io as a developer experience engineer for the past 2 years, hence today's T-shirt. And finally, I'm an Nuxt contributor and ambassador. I've been using Nuxt for almost 5 years now, so you start to see the link with this talk. But, OK, so enough me chatting. Let's dive into it. So what are Nuxt modules? So no worries, I explained that as if you're new to Nuxt. So it will be beginner-friendly. Nuxt is a meta framework for Vue.js, and from its documentations, Nuxt modules are Nuxt.js extensions, which can extend its core functionality and add endless integrations. Pretty powerful, huh? Basically, what this means is that Nuxt modules are like add-ons that you can add to Nuxt in order to do pretty much anything with it. And this can go from making your website a PWA to flashing connected lights in your room if there's an error within your code. I certainly did that later. But all right, for a more concrete approach, Nuxt modules are registered inside Nuxt configuration. They can be a package name, a relative path to a module you have locally, or even the module code directly that you can import within your file. Specific options can be provided to such module using this array syntax. And finally, you can also provide such options using different config keys that the module support. So, well, that gives us a relative understanding of Nuxt modules. But let's wind back a tiny bit and talk about modules with Nuxt 2. So with Nuxt 2, the module ecosystem has grown pretty rich. And talking about PWA earlier on, well, guess what? First, the module for that. It takes care of all the gotchas relating to make that possible, and is easy to set up. Again, another random example. You want to connect to your favorite headless CMS. Again, there's a module for that. It's maintained by a wonderful person. What more to ask? But OK, there's actually a whole lot of other wonderful people maintaining great CMS modules out there, so go check any of them out. All right, but you got my point. With Nuxt 2, you want to do something, there's a module for that. And, well, you can check out modules.nuxt.js.org, check out the most comprehensive list of modules available for everyone in Nuxt 2 and Nuxt 3. So let's talk about Nuxt 3. So Nuxt 3 modules are now a thing. They come with a nicer developer experience. The catch to that is that Nuxt 3 module ecosystem is still really tiny as of speaking today, but that will definitely change as Nuxt 3 modules are obviously the future of Nuxt modules. So to recap what we learned so far about Nuxt modules, we know that Nuxt modules are add-ons to Nuxt. They are registered inside Nuxt config for both Nuxt 2 and Nuxt 3. And also in Nuxt 2, the module ecosystem is rich, but about to be legacy. And the module ecosystem in Nuxt 3 is fancy, but still a newborn today. So to that, I want to add something that is really important also, is that you can make your own. You can make your own Nuxt modules. And, well, if you don't believe me, I can prove that. So chances are that if you're working with Nuxt, you're a developer. It happens that developers do write code. That's the breaking news. And, well, modules are made just of that. So I don't know, but between you and me, I can see a pretty straight line from you to Nuxt modules. So you can make Nuxt modules. But, all right, more realistically, why would you want to make Nuxt modules of your own, especially with so many modules already out there? Well, there's multiple reasons for that. First of all, as we've seen earlier, modules are capable of doing pretty much anything within Nuxt. And in that regard, modules are an excellent way to abstract code from your code base and share it reliably across different projects you have. This works especially great if you're an agency making websites for multiple clients in Nuxt, or if you're an enterprise managing multiple internal Nuxt applications. And personally, I did that with my project of mine, so that I had one module that provided Vue meta helpers to format them the way I want them, so that my SEO was consistent across all my website. also add some Nuxt payload transformers that did something for me for generating my website in a different way, and also had ones that provided project statistics because, well, I'm a nerd. So, well, another reason to make Nuxt Modules of your own is that you can facilitate integration with the tool you use. And, well, indeed, was there already modules out there for Tailwind CSS or Sentry? There might not be one about a specific service you use. Maybe it's an internal service like an LDAP connection system, or like a new or niche tool that like you're into. So in that case, why not create a module about it? It doesn't need to be super fancy to get started. So, well, I think you got my point. There's reason to create Nuxt modules. But how do we do so? Well, that's what I'm about to tell you. Let's learn how to create Nuxt modules in Nuxt 3. So first of all, if you never built module in Nuxt 2, that's fine. If you did, there's some new things coming with Nuxt 3 modules. First of all, they come with first-class TypeScript support. They also have a stronger structure, and this is great because this allows for a nicer developer experience for module offers, and they also come with better defaults for you. So as of today, the best way to create a Nuxt 3 module is to use Nuxt Nuxt 3 CLI, and by launching this command, this will bootstrap a Nuxt 3 module for you, and then you just have to install dependencies with NPM or your favorite package manager. I'm not here to judge. And because I absolutely no trust in the Wi-Fi connection in that room, I already did that in that project right here. So, well, let's take a minute to explore that default project that was created for us by Nuxt. So first of all, we have two directories. The src directory is all the source code of our module. That's what we will work on later on. The playground directory is the one that holds default Nuxt application that has been configured with our module inside it. And this playground is the place that we will use to develop our module to check that it behaves as expected and everything. Moving on, we can see there's a package.json. Inside it, there's multiple things noteworthy. The first one is that it's already configured to be shipped to NPM properly. So that's great because you don't have to take care of it, and it's already configured so that Nuxt takes it like as expected. Then we have multiple scripts. So the first one, the prepx scripts, uses this Nuxt module build command. This is basically an in-house builder that has been developed by Nuxt in order to bundle your module the way Nuxt expects it to be bundled. So that's extra nice for you because this means that if you want to get started with Nuxt modules, you don't have to learn how to bundle such modules and go through the headache of configuring like such bundler. Moving on, we have few dev scripts. So those dev scripts are meant for you to interact with the playground we talked about earlier on. So you to launch its dev server, like I have here right now. So you can see my dev server running, and here this is my playground running my module. And the build command is just to build it. Finally, the dev prepare command. This one is a bit special. Basically, it's just to build your types for your project. But, well, we don't need to use it today, but you know it's here. Finally, regarding dependencies, there's two things noteworthy here. The first one is that we have NuxtKit. So NuxtKit is a new package made available by Nuxt. It's a set of helpers that Nuxt provide to you in order to develop your module better and with a nicer developer experience. Then inside dev dependencies, we have Nuxt module builder. This is the CLI command we talked about before, and that is responsible for building our module. All right. So when it comes to the root of this project, you can see there's like multiple dot files. So you might know most of them. Feel free to fine-tune them to your liking. However, if you plan on sharing your module with the Nuxt community, it's better to keep those defaults, as this will allow your module to share consistent coding style among other community modules available out there. All right, so let's now peek inside our src directory. So inside it, we have a module.ts file. This is our module entry point. And, well, as you might have noticed, it's a TypeScript file. And, well, there's a reason for that, because Nuxt 3 is putting the incentive on TypeScript, as it results in a much nicer developer experience for end users. But no worries, if you're not comfortable with TypeScript yet, you can still build module in plain JavaScript. But for today's demo sake, we will keep this TypeScript file. But no worries, we won't do any TypeScript like magic, so everything will look like just like plain JavaScript. So if we now look inside this module, well, we can see there's already a bunch of code inside it. So first of all, we have our imports at the beginning of it. So those are imports from NuxtKit. We will go through and explain them later on. Then we have a TypeScript interface. So, well, this is a way in TypeScript to define an object structure. But as promised, no black magic today, so we'll stay away from it. And finally, we have our export default, which uses the define Nuxt module utility made available from NuxtKit that allows us to define our module, and our module is the object right here. So let's break down this object for a minute. First of all, we have the meta property. This object basically holds information for Nuxt about our module, its name, and the config key we'd like to use to provide options to our module inside Nuxt config. So here, it's my module, and we can see that inside my Nuxt config, I'm able to provide options to my module using the my module key inside Nuxt config. And this is all typed, by the way. So if we go back to our module, we now have the default property. So the default property holds an object of default options that we'd like our module to have. And those options will be merged against user-provided options. For example, here I just have an add plugin key with a default value of true. And this will mean that if my user didn't provide an add plugin options, it will default to true. And then the last one, we have this setup function. So this function is a core code of our module. It can be an asynchronous function if you really need to, but it's recommended to keep it synchronous because otherwise it can slow down Nuxt startup process. This function receives two arguments. The first one is the options object. So those are the options the user provided to your module merged against the default options we talked about before. Then we have a Nuxt object. This is a way to access Nuxt internals and do things with it. And inside this function, well, this is a default module that is initiated by Nuxty. We have some example code, but we can just get rid of it, as we will come back later to it. OK, so, well, that was a pretty dense section during our project. Let's just recap what we learned about it so far. First of all, we can create a module using Nuxt CLI. Then modules come with new defaults and a bundle by Nuxt. NuxtKit is a set of helpers to develop Nuxt modules. Nuxt modules are TypeScript by default now, but you can still use JavaScript if you need to. And modules are defined through define Nuxt modules from NuxtKit. OK, so now that we're more familiar with that module structure, let's start by doing a few things with our project. So I get back to my project, and, well, what if we started by just logging some cheesy stuff to just get in hand? So in France, aperitif or apéro is a sacred moment of the day that happens around 7 p.m. Some would argue it's earlier or that it's apéro anytime, but basically just a time when we gather with family and friends to enjoy drinks together. And in that regard, what if we warned our developers that it's apéro time inside our module so that they know and they get this important warning that it's apéro time that should stop developing right now? So we can do that pretty simply, just a quick if statement. And we get the hours. So for the sake of today's demo, we'll advance apéro time, especially to 3 p.m. So this goes 15. And now I can just console warn. Something like that. It's apéro time. Stop working. So now if I save that and I go back to my server, I can launch again my playground. And now if I haven't messed up anything, we should get this really important warning that it's apéro time, and we should stop developing. Here we go. So, well, I get it. Like, logging is just like not that exciting at all, but it's still like a useful way to provide information to developers. But let's do some more advanced things with our module now. What if, for example, we just updated programmatically our Nuxt config from our module? To do so, I can leverage the Nuxt object from before, and I go Nuxt.options. And this gives us access to the whole Nuxt configuration that is running right now. And we can programmatically update it to suit the module need. So for example, I can disable SSR like this. And this will disable SSR for my whole website from my module. Well, really, it's just like a really simple example, but really you can do anything using Nuxt options to update Nuxt config. And well, why it might be silly to just disable SSR like this doesn't make a lot of sense. What if, for example, we just added like a style sheet from our module? So remember, right now it's a white background, and this allows me to introduce you to the runtime directory. So the runtime directory is this directory here that I ignored until now. It's quite a special directory with Nuxt modules. Basically, it's where we'll store assets that will be made available to our runtime application. So that's the website we're making. The module code here that we're developing since the beginning, this is not made available to our application. It's just made available to Nuxt to alter its behavior. So inside my runtime directory, I can create a quick style.css file. Inside it, I add some styles. So I say background red. like this. And now, if I go back to my module, I can load this style sheet into Nuxt. So to do so, I need to do two things. First one is to create a resolver. So I go const resolve equals create resolver, import.meta.helper. And basically, create resolver is a utility made available by NuxtKit that allows us to resolve paths consistently. So it's just nice to use it. And once we have our resolver, we can go next.options.css.push. And now we can resolve our CSS file from before inside runtime /style. And now if I save that and I give it like a quick refresh to my next server, here we go. So it will take some time because like we're on Windows and everything's still on Windows, but we'll get to it. It shouldn't take more than like 20 seconds. And well, if I haven't messed up anything, our background should appear red in a few. So here we go. Our background is red, and we loaded a style sheet from our module inside Nuxt. OK, so let's keep working with the runtime directory. What if we now injected a plugin from our module inside Nuxt? So with the default boilerplate, we already have a plugin made available to us. Well, it contains like a console log, and I quickly added already this just provide, which provides like a my module object inside my Nuxt application with some formatting utilities that I'd like to use. And so here I have just like a really simple formatting utility that does nothing, but that's for the sake of an example. So in order to load this plugin inside my Nuxt application, there's 3 steps we need to go through. The first one is to resolve our plugin path. So go const plugin equal resolve, and then we go runtime plugin.js. And then the last thing we need to do is to push our plugin to the next build terms file array. Push plugin. So basically, what this told us is this told Nuxt to transpile our plugin, because otherwise you will have like trouble while building it. And finally, we can just use the add plugin helper from NuxtKit to inject our plugin inside our Nuxt application. So here we go. And again, like the add plugin was provided by NuxtKit. So what this does is inject our plugin inside our Nuxt application. So again, I will refresh it. And if I go back to my playground, inside the app, I can say that I'm using Nuxt using use Nuxt app. And inside I can access Nuxt.myModule. And if it's here, it should log out my module content. So we should now see in the console the formatting utilities we just worked on. And here we go. We have the formatting utilities made available inside our application, thanks to our module. All right. So that was 3 things you can do with Nuxt module. Of course, you can do a lot more, like adding auto imports for composables, same for components, and there's really like a whole world of things you can do with Nuxt modules. So there's something I haven't touched on so far that is quite central to Nuxt. It's the concept of hooks. So what are hooks? Hooks are windows to Nuxt internal to which you can hook to. They allow you to get information about what's happening inside Nuxt, react to them, or even alter Nuxt behaviors to make Nuxt do something like completely different. And I admit, hooks are a bit oriented toward advanced use cases, but are really what makes Nuxt modules capable of anything. And well, how do you use hook? There's 2 ways to do so. The first one is programmatic using Nuxt.hook. Here I'm hooking to the page.extend hook, and this receives the number of pages I'm generating, and I'm just like logging how many pages are about to be run by Nuxt. And the second way is this sugar function inside our module definition. It's a hooks map, and inside it, again, I can provide the same kind of hook to hook to, and here I'm also logging the number of pages that are about to be discovered by Nuxt. So, OK, so to recap, everything we learned while writing modules for now. Any code can run inside the module setup function. NuxtKit provides a lot of utilities for common tasks. Really, here we only showed 3 of them, but there's really like a ton more. So feel free to go ahead and explore NuxtKit to know like everything you can do with Nuxt module. Also, the runtime directory holds assets made available by the module to your runtime website. And hooks are windows to Nuxt internal that you can hook to, react to, or even alter them. So now that we know how to do module, what do we know? What's the next step? So first of all, we can share our module with the community and npm. To do so, we just need to pick a version number and run the npm publish command.
then at some point you might want to test it. So in that regard, Nuxt is still working on Nuxt test utils for Nuxt 3. And this will be a collection of utilities to help us run our modules in the Nuxt context inside your test. And finally, it's not a super official one, but it's really widely adopted by the Nuxt community, is the use of standard version CLI, which is a really neat CLI that streamlines your publication process and makes sure you don't forget about anything, while also generating your changelog programmatically after you commit messages. So that's not all, folks. There's some extra perks to running Nuxt modules. And that's something like really important in my opinion. Basically, by learning Nuxt modules, you get a deeper understanding of Nuxt behaviors and internals, and this allows you to troubleshoot Nuxt more easily. Also, a fun fact, Nuxt itself, the core code of Nuxt, is partly made out of modules and relies on module-like APIs. So in a way, you also start to learn how Nuxt is really working internally. Also, being familiar with the module structures allows you multiple things. First of all, it gives you a better understanding of the module you use, as you can now peek inside the source code of them, and that's really I really encourage you to do, as I learned a lot about Nuxt this way. Quickly, for example, if we have a look at Nuxt color module source code, this is an abstract of it. We can see that it's using this really neat pattern to inject its options from the module inside the runtime application by creating an alias. So that's something you could pick up for your own module and use inside your, pick up for your own module. So second perk of learning the module structure is you're now able to contribute to the ecosystem. In the deck, you'll learn one code base, and this allows you to contribute to hundreds of code base available among the Nuxt community. So if you found a bug while using a module, you can now fix it. If you're craving for a feature on your favorite module, sure, go ahead, open a pull request. That's personally how I became comfortable with contributing to open source. And if you're interested in that, that's an awesome way to get started, as in my opinion, modules are an excellent way to get started and comfortable with open source. And if you don't know where to get started, again, all community modules are available on modules.nuxt.js.org. So that was Nuxt 3 modules and open source. Nuxt modules are a way to extend Nuxt functionalities endlessly. You can make Nuxt modules for your team or the whole community. Modules are nicely structured and come with improved developer experience in Nuxt 3 and defaults. Learn that structure gives you better understanding of Nuxt and allows you to contribute to the community. So, you can find all the information about this talk at lucie.red/Amsterdam. You have the slides, the source code, the transcript there, so if you want to check out, go there. And you can also follow me and my tech nonsense on Twitter at lucie.red/Twitter. Thanks.